How long did you plan this?
Moving to Portland?
Yeah.
I mean, we've always like kind of played with the idea like of moving down here, but it wasn't until the pandemic and when we started our pop-up up in Seattle, when we started to really think like, okay, like can we make this into something more than just a pop-up? Like, can we have our own business and do the food that we want to do?
That's where it started.
That's where it started, yeah.
These two wonderful humans here are Geri and Ethan, owners of the food truck Baon Kainan, a Filipino concept that challenges the way most people think about Filipino food, not just by outsiders, more especially by the people within their own culture. By way of Seattle, Washington, they arrived in Portland at the height of the pandemic. For years prior, their time in the industry was spent doing plenty of restaurant work in big and small kitchens, as well as hosting private dinners, and eventually a number of pop-ups known for their remarkable take on Filipino cuisine. The story goes that one day their now neighbors Mata, another fantastic food truck here in Portland, found themselves attending one of those pop-ups during a weekend trip in Seattle. After trying a number of wonderful dishes and copious amounts of wine, the folks from Mata said, "You should move to Portland." To which in return, Ethan said, "Sounds like a plan. See you soon." Kind of. But you know, that type of young people shit.
The name came from when we started doing the pop-ups at Ethan's old restaurant. At that time in the pandemic, all the restaurants were doing takeout to go. And so we were trying to get back to basics during that time too. We were personally looking for comfort food. And so naturally it was Filipino food. That's where our comfort comes from. And so the term that came to mind when you think about Filipino food and the to-go concept is baon. So baon is a term in Tagalog that means food that you take to go or on a journey. So most of the time, people in the Philippines and here in the States, Filipino Americans, when they say baon, it's your work lunch or your school lunch. So you're in the office kitchen and someone's like, "What's your baon for today?" And that's talking about the food that we brought to work.
There are at least 4 Filipino concepts that now exist in Portland Metro. That's about 4 more that existed prior to 2019. It's not that this food is trending. The hard truth is that for years, many within their own culture sabotaged it. Not intentionally, but just enough to never uphold it in the same conversations as French, Spanish, or even Italian. To say this cuisine is undergoing a shift in cultural identity, it's a sizable understatement. In the space of everything that is Filipino cuisine, where does it live? How would you classify it? Because is it traditional? Is it home style?
The best way that I like to describe it is it's traditional Filipino food in not so traditional ways. So whenever, like when we menu plan, for example, we always start off with how our moms would make the food or make the dishes. We always we taste it and just know like what the foundation is, and then we start to kind of explore like, okay, how can we make it different? How can we make it unique?
What's the reception like with Filipino folk?
Oh my gosh.
It's been, hit or miss. And, it is understanding. So when we started, we actually put something in our bio saying, "Not your tita's cooking." And I think that was pretty bold. I think it raised some eyebrows. And
right.
So, tita means auntie.
Auntie, yeah.
In Filipino and in the Filipino culture. And so what we mean by that is not so much to offend our aunties or uncles or, our parents' generation. It's more to just be upfront and say, hey, what you grew up making or eating is not going to be found here because we didn't grow up in the Philippines. We didn't grow up with authentic Filipino ingredients here in the States. But we're trying to find this bridge of who we are as Filipino Americans. So it's our food.
Filipino American. As if being Filipino wasn't hard enough already, you add that stupid hyphen between the words Filipino and American, and all of a sudden you find yourself spending half of your life attempting to overcompensate for how not American you are while fighting your elders on the importance of being progressive. Just a small price to pay for the burden of being born to the greatest nation in the world. Shit.
How would you describe your clientele?
Mostly white.
I mean, you're in Portland.
Yeah.
This city.
There's a lot of white people. We do get Filipino Americans, Filipinos, just people our age too, who've been following us like since the beginning, or even like whenever they started following us. Yeah.
And for the most part, we've received great feedback from all of those segments of our.
No, your food's incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But it's been interesting to hear, feedback, especially from Filipino Americans our age, because a lot of them are here away from their families, and it feels amazing when they can say, wow, your food really brings me back. Like, I know I'm eating kare-kare with fries, but that's kare-kare, like with the shrimp paste on the side and the peanut butter, like that really brings me back, and that means a lot to us, and it's very validating. And even when we do get the titos and titas and then they actually really like our food, that is like a win for us.
Yeah.
We always get nervous when we see.
Oh, it's the scariest.
They're our
we're
hardest
just like,
critics.
"Ooh."
Right.
And and they'll speak to me in Tagalog, and my Tagalog isn't that great, but I can understand them, so I'll try to respond back. And it's great when they come back to the window and they actually say that they like the food. It's really valid.
Hardest critics. I'd much rather defend my work against 100 white food critics than to have a doña tell me that our menudo is not really menudo. From my own experience as a restaurateur, I can tell you that there's nothing that will bring you more joy than to have an elder tell you that your food, it really brings them back. And at the same time, there's nothing that will fuck with you more than a person from your own culture tell you that your food is really not authentic food. Authentic to what?
I'm going to ask you the same question for both, and I'm going to start with you. What do you want the world to take away from what you're doing right now as far as your cuisine goes?
In terms of what I'm doing is, the sky's the limit. I never went to culinary school. I just learned everything on the job, watched countless YouTube videos, read countless cookbooks, and I knew getting into this industry that the route that I was taking was going to be the hard route, and it's not the the orthodox way of doing things,
Right.
But it's definitely worth it, and like getting to this point to have my own business with my wife and to share the food that we do and share the food of our culture, at this point, I feel like we can really do anything and just keep going up from here.
It's beautiful. And for you?
Yeah, I just want to show, one small representation of what Filipino American cuisine looks like. Like Ethan said, Filipino cuisine is starting to join the greater food narrative in the States, and I'd love to contribute to that more and just showcase what Filipino food has been, but also what it can be.
Right.
And